who has identified himself as a longtime Democratic staffer. This is not a Republican operative, a Democratic staffer who was working in Democratic offices at the time of the alleged leaking in 1617. This staffer was interviewed by FBI agents on several occasions and told those agents that then Congressman Adam Schiff was the one who approved the leaks to the media.
And then comes the real hypocrisy. Schiff spent his whole career calling out others for lying, yet his own image was built on exaggerations, selective leaks, and stories designed to mislead. Kelly shows him as the politician who points one finger, while three point right back at him. He wasn't the truth teller, he was the salesman, and when the product failed, the salesman had nothing left. That's why today his credibility is worth about as much as an old Blockbuster card. Kelly hits hardest on the gap between Schiff's inflated self-importance and his weak actual results. Instead of doing something noble, he broke public trust, fueled division, and left people more doubtful of government than ever. Kelly frames him not as a guardian of truth, but as a warning sign, a man who proved that even the so-called watchdogs are chasing the same fame and attention as the politicians they claim to oppose. Once exposed, the so-called crusader looked less like a hero and more like just another opportunist. Kelly doesn't just roast him, she buries him under the weight of his own record, and it's not a flattering picture. Schiff wanted the legacy of a respected statesman, but what he left behind looks more like an internet parody. He isn't the architect of policy or the defender of democracy he imagined. He's a meme, a punchline, the man who built a career on dramatic claims that fell apart under scrutiny. Kelly pulls that record into the spotlight, showing that his biggest contribution wasn't progress or reform, but an endless stream of empty promises. Once exposed, the cracks in his polished image became impossible to ignore, and the myth of Adam Schiff as a serious political figure dissolved. What remains is a hollow legacy, remembered more for noise than for substance.
Now, this staff member began talking to the FBI in 2017 because he said he considered the leaks to be, quote, unethical, illegal, and treasonous. This is a Democrat staffer who is saying to the FBI he had a holy shit moment when he heard Adam Schiff give the order. These documents that outline the FBI's interview, like the FBI doesn't tape its interviews. They go back and they report what they heard in the...
Megyn points out how Schiff mastered the act of putting on a serious face during TV interviews, as if widening his eyes and lowering his voice could replace real evidence. He told Americans he had proof of collusion so explosive it would change history, teased major revelations, and acted like he was guarding political secrets on the level of nuclear codes, only to deliver nothing. Again and again, Schiff's so-called investigations ended up less like Sherlock Holmes and more like Scooby-Doo, except without even the cartoon's big reveal, just endless guesses that eventually faded into nothing.
I'm going to shock the world right now and defend Adam Schiff. In response to the heat he's getting for the following clip.
It is an existential threat, Senator, and also
asleep.
I have not seen it yet, but from what I've heard about former FBI Director Ray,
someone in the audience behind
comments on 60
Pam
Minutes regarding China
is videotaping Adam Schiff asleep.
In our own country, infiltrating our water systems, our natural gas lines.
I defend Adam Schiff because these confirmations...
Because Adam Schiff doesn't deal in truth, he deals in hints and innuendo. His real skill isn't uncovering corruption, it's stretching out a story just long enough to keep himself in the spotlight. Megyn Kelly drives this point home by saying the obvious. If Schiff had even half the evidence he bragged about, it would have come out years ago. Instead, he dragged hearings on, fed catchy sound bites to the media, and played the role of the hero in a story that was never real. He's not a watchdog, he's a hype man for political theater built on conspiracy.
Don't believe he's going to weaponize the DOJ to use it against his opponents. I believe that's what was done to him. Though, as we discussed with Alan Dershowitz and that now famous clip that went around where I said we need Steve Bannon, I'm not totally opposed to it. I'm going to be honest. Who would cry a tear if Adam Schiff actually got some sort of hassle thrown his way by the DOJ.
What makes Schiff such an easy target is the way he confidently doubles down even after being proven wrong. Most politicians, when exposed, at least try some form of damage control. Schiff, however, acts as if the public is too clueless to catch. Megyn Kelly tears into this arrogance, showing how he could stand in front of cameras, repeat promises that never came true, and then pretend the real issue was people daring to question him. It's the kind of bold gaslighting you'd expect from a shady salesman trying to pass off a broken car as a luxury ride. Schiff didn't just twist the truth, he treated it like a stage prop.
Schiff stated the group would leak classified information which was derogatory to the President of the United States, Donald J. Trump. Schiff stated the information would be used to indict President Trump. The whistleblower stated this would be illegal. And upon hearing his concerns, unnamed members of the meeting reassured that they would not be caught leaking classified information.
Megyn also points out the blatant hypocrisy Schiff carries like it's part of his brand. Here's a man who claims to be a crusader against corruption, yet never hesitated to twist the system when it worked in his favor. From leaking cherry-picked details to the press, to pushing shaky intelligence stories, to turning hearings into his own personal stage, Schiff's career has been less about serving the public and more about serving himself. He treats the House floor like it's an audition for an HBO drama, always chasing that one dramatic line that makes the evening news. And this is where Megyn Kelly's breakdown hits hardest. His hunger for attention wasn't just embarrassing, it was harmful. While Schiff was busy selling himself as the savior of democracy, Congress was bogged down in endless partisan theater that wasted years of time. Megyn nails him as the perfect example of a politician who values headlines over results. Because when you strip away the speeches, the investigations, and the sound bites, his actual record is paper thin. Decades in office, and if you ask his own constituents what he's delivered, the silence says it all. His biggest accomplishment is mastering outrage theater.
President Biden pardoned Adam Schiff at the end of his term. But unlike the one he gave to Hunter, it was a limited pardon.
It was.
And it only spoke to J6 and his work on the January 6th Select Committee. So it would not immunize him from any of the claims you and I are discussing right now, right?
The so-called highlight of Schiff's career, if you can even call it that, was the impeachment spectacle. He squeezed every drop of spotlight from those hearings, speaking in a tone so self-righteous it felt like watching a failed actor try to perform Shakespeare in a high school gym. Megyn Kelly tears into the act for what it really was. Scripted outrage designed not to uncover truth, but to cast Schiff as the face of resistance. And like every other production he's led, the ending was a letdown. He didn't change history, he didn't expose the conspiracy he promised, he just burned months of America's time. Megyn nails the real issue. Schiff doesn't usually tell outright lies. He hides behind clever wording like a magician hides behind smoke. He never says, here's the proof. Instead, it's, the evidence suggests, or there are reasons to believe. These lines sound weighty until you realize they're hollow phrases that give him cover when nothing ever materializes. It's political sleight of hand. Say just enough to spark outrage, but never enough to face accountability. Schiff perfected that con, but Megyn Kelly pulls the curtain back, exposing it for what it is, a lazy trick.
So walk us through what the 302 reports that the FBI wrote up after their interviews with this whistleblower say.
Yeah, so let's give you a sense of who this person is. We don't know their name because the name is redacted, but we know their career. They're a career intelligence officer. So they started in the executive branch as an intelligence officer, and then they get detailed to the Democratic side of the House Intelligence Committee. Eventually, this person inherits as his boss, Adam Schiff, when Adam Schiff takes over as the Democrat minority ranking member on House Intelligence in 2016. And they're working for Adam Schiff. And somewhere in the beginning of the Russia collusion, false narrative building in America, he attends a meeting where Adam Schiff says, we're going to...
And then there's Schiff's obsession with Donald Trump, which Megyn Kelly slices apart like a chef carving a steak. Schiff built his entire brand on being the man who would bring Trump down. Night after night, he popped up on television, promising Trump's downfall was just around the corner, that accountability was imminent. Yet years later, Trump is still standing, still dominating headlines, while Schiff is recycling the same tired script. It's not just ironic, it's humiliating. His legacy is now permanently chained to the man he swore he would destroy. History won't remember Schiff as a truth teller, but as the politician who barked endlessly without ever delivering a bite. Megyn also calls out Schiff's shameless fundraising off this obsession, every dire warning, every theatrical press conference, every vague hint about national security just happened to line up with another round of donation emails. Schiff didn't just stir up fear, he cashed in on it. He turned political paranoia into a subscription service, convincing loyal followers to bankroll his endless soap opera. And what did they get for their money? Nothing but empty promises and Schiff's smug face on TV.
I mean, didn't we just have a whole criminal investigation of Donald Trump for having documents at Mar-a-Lago that might have classified information in them, and we just can't have that. We can't have classified information running around out there in the hands of people who aren't authorized. Meanwhile, this is the former president of the United States who can declassify everything. We were told that for 2 years straight, the past 2 years by Democrats. And now what you're saying is that one of the most vocal about that, Adam Schiff, had been at the helm of releasing classified information.
His defenders like to argue that Schiff is just doing his job, that he's bravely standing up for democracy, but Megyn Kelly calls that excuse exactly what it is: nonsense. Standing up for democracy doesn't mean dragging the country through endless hearings that go nowhere. It doesn't mean turning congressional investigations into self-promotional stunts. And it sure doesn't mean crying wolf so often that when something serious does happen, nobody believes it anymore. Megyn also zeroes in on Schiff's constant projection. He warns about the dangers of misinformation while spreading narratives that never come true. He brands himself as a defender of truth while leaving behind a trail of half-truths, exaggerations, and outright fabrications. Schiff doesn't just bend the rules, he twists them until they're unrecognizable. And through it all, he wears that same smug, self-righteous expression, almost daring anyone to challenge him.
While this is only the unverified allegation of a single former staffer, the alleged conduct would involve criminal and unethical conduct of the highest order, if proven. Your reaction to this news?
Well, it's in keeping with my opinion of Adam Schiff. I've been calling him McCarthyite ever since he started in on Trump. And as John pointed out, McCarthy, at least there had some communists in the government that he was talking about, although he was irresponsible. Adam Schiff repeatedly came out and said, I have seen documents that indict, that link Trump to Russia, but I can't reveal them to you now, but just you wait, I'm going to reveal them. And of course, we know they weren't there. We know there was nothing there. Now we have this information from the whistleblower, my favorite part of which is when the whistleblower says he objected to the illegality.
At the heart of Megyn Kelly's takedown is one blunt truth. Adam Schiff is a fraud, not in the courtroom sense, but in the professional sense. He sold himself as a warrior for truth, yet all he delivered was theater. He turned serious issues into punchlines, promised results he could never produce, and left the public more divided, more skeptical, and more exhausted than before. Schiff doesn't protect democracy, he cheapens it by turning it into a reality show. And the final blow is that Schiff still doesn't see it. Even after years of failed predictions and hollow performances, he keeps marching onto TV sets with the same undeserved confidence. But history won't forget. History has already stamped his legacy. Adam Schiff, the man who cried collusion, the man who treated hearings like Broadway auditions, the man who mistook political theater for leadership. Megyn Kelly doesn't just roast him, she tears him apart. She exposes Schiff not as a guardian of democracy, but as a salesman of fear, not as a teller of truth, but as a bender of it, not as a hero, but as the cautionary tale of what happens when politicians chase cameras instead of results.
So the whistleblower was reportedly very specific on the details. Like it doesn't sound like a lie because this person had a lot of details when speaking to the FBI. Quote, when working in this capacity, this whistleblower was called to an all-staff meeting by Schiff. In this meeting, Schiff stated the group would leak classified information, which was derogatory.
And when the curtain finally drops, Schiff won't be remembered as the noble defender of the Constitution he pretended to be. He'll be remembered as the politician who promised a smoking gun but only delivered smoke. What makes Kelly's dismantling Sting even more is how she pits Schiff's carefully crafted image against the real damage he caused. He wanted to be seen as the brave defender of democracy, the man who spotted threats others missed. Instead, his legacy is political theater. At its worst, a warning of what happens when ambition runs faster than credibility. Schiff didn't strengthen institutions. He weakened them by turning them into partisan stage props, and that stain won't wash away. Kelly drives it home by showing how Schiff clung to TV cameras like they were lifeboats, using media not to push policy but to inflate his ego, repeating the same baseless lines until the repetition itself became his shield. To him, exposure was power, but every appearance also exposed the cracks in his story. And as Kelly points out, America eventually caught on.
Now have whistleblower interview transcripts from the FBI. They're not exactly transcripts, they're FBI write-ups of the interviews that they conducted with a whistleblower who's a self-described Democrat working for the Democrats on the House Intelligence Committee, who worked for them, by the way, for 10 years, who says that he was there in 17 when he heard Adam Schiff say, "We are going to leak classified documents and intel to the media," with the hopes of getting Donald Trump.
And then comes the real hypocrisy. Schiff spent his whole career calling out others for lying, yet his own image was built on exaggerations, selective leaks, and stories designed to mislead. Kelly shows him as the politician who points one finger while three point right back at him. He wasn't the truth teller, he was the salesman, and when the product failed, the salesman had nothing left. That's why today his credibility is worth about as much as an old blockbuster card. Kelly hits hardest on the gap between Schiff's inflated self-importance and his weak actual results. Instead of doing something noble, he broke public trust, fueled division, and left people more doubtful of government than ever. Kelly frames him not as a guardian of truth, but as a warning sign, a man who proved that even the so-called watchdogs are chasing the same fame and attention as the politicians they claim to oppose. Once exposed, the so-called crusader looked less like a hero and more like just another opportunist. Kelly doesn't just roast him, she buries him under the weight of his own record, and it's not a flattering picture. Schiff wanted the legacy of a respected statesman, but what he left behind looks more like an internet parody. He isn't the architect of policy or the defender of democracy he imagined. He's a meme, a punchline, the man who built a career on dramatic claims that fell apart under scrutiny. Kelly pulls that record into the spotlight, showing that his biggest contribution wasn't progress or reform, but an endless stream of empty promises. Once exposed, the cracks in his polished image became impossible to ignore, and the myth of Adam Schiff as a serious political figure dissolved. What remains is a hollow legacy, remembered more for noise than for substance.